When you look back at history, some of the most critical turning points, the moments that change everything, they don't happen over years. Sometimes it all comes down to a matter of days. Today we're talking about one of those moments, and it all revolves around one man who held the future of Ethiopia in his hands for just 90 days, General Aman Andom.
And that really brings us to the core question of this whole story. Is it possible that one person's belief in doing the right thing could have actually steered an entire nation away from the nightmare it was about to enter?
So, let's set the scene. The year is 1974. Ethiopia is in total chaos. The ancient empire led by Haile Selassie has just collapsed, and it's left this huge power vacuum. The country is absolutely desperate for a leader to pull it all together.
And right into the middle of all this turmoil steps General Aman Andom. At that moment, he seemed like the perfect person for the job, the one guy who could somehow connect the old world with the new, revolutionary one.
So, who was this guy? Well, for starters, he was a genuine national hero, famous for his victories in the Ethio-Somali War. They even called him the Desert Lion. But it was more than that. People respected him for his integrity. He was also an Eritrean, which gave a lot of people hope that he could solve the conflict brewing there peacefully. And here's the crucial part. Aman wasn't some power-hungry general. He truly believed the military's job was just to get things stable and then hand power right back to a civilian government.
A lot of his popularity, his real clout, came from his time commanding the legendary 3rd Division in Harar. The soldiers loved him, they trusted him, and in a country that was suddenly being run by the military, that trust was everything. It's exactly why he was picked to lead. But here's the thing. All this hope, this one man's vision, it was on a direct collision course with a much darker, more ruthless plan for Ethiopia's future. A plan held by the very people who put him in charge.
And his main opponent was this group called the Derg. This was basically a committee of military guys who'd taken over. And inside the Derg, a really hard-line group was starting to call the shots, led by a young major you've probably heard of, Mengistu Haile Mariam.
I mean, just look at how differently they saw Ethiopia's future. It was a total clash. Abazan wanted to negotiate a peaceful end to the conflict in Eritrea. The Derg wanted to send in the army and crush the rebellion. Abazan insisted on fair trials for officials from the old government. Mengistu's group wanted to just execute them. And maybe the biggest difference, Abazan saw military rule as a temporary fix. The Derg wanted to hold on to power forever. There was just no middle ground.
And you gotta understand, Aman wasn't just talking about peace. He went for it. He personally traveled to Eritrea, his homeland, and he gave speeches promising a new way forward, one based on respect and finding common ground. Every single move he made towards peace was a slap in the face to the Derg's military ambitions. What Tekli puts it, it all came down to this. Aman believed the army should fix the mess and then go back to the barracks. But the Derg wanted to be the power. That one disagreement, that core principle of his, it's what sealed his fate. A conflict like this couldn't last forever. Something had to give. And in November 1974, just 2 months after he took charge, the whole thing just exploded. And it happened incredibly fast.
I mean, look at how quickly this unraveled. On November 15th, he goes public, sending out a message to the army, basically calling out the Derg. Just 2 days later, it's a full-blown showdown. They demand he send more troops and execute prisoners. He flat out refuses and resigns right there on the spot. Less than a week later, his house is surrounded.
But even backed into a corner, Aman tried to make one last move. From inside his house, he tried to get messages out to his loyal supporters in the military, hoping they'd back him up. But Mengistu was a step ahead. He intercepted all of Aman's appeals, cutting him off completely.
The end came that night. The official story was that he was killed while resisting arrest. The reality was a heavy gun battle at his home. And just like that, the Desert Lion, the man who was Ethiopia's biggest hope, was gone. His time in power and all the promise it held lasted only 90 days.
And his death wasn't just the end of his life. It was the end of an entire idea for what Ethiopia could be. It basically unlocked the door and pushed the country into a much, much darker chapter. 59. Remember that number. Because on the exact same night that General Aman was killed, 59 former imperial officials, we're talking prime ministers, generals, aristocrats, they were all taken from their prison cells.
With General Aman out of the picture, the one man who had stood up for them, the Derg's radicals did exactly what he had fought so hard to stop. They executed all 59 of them. No trial, no process, just gone. This document here is the actual execution order. It was the first big massacre of the revolution, and it happened the second the one man standing in its way was eliminated. After that, the descent was terrifyingly quick. Azamon's assassination completely cleared the way for Mengistu to grab total power. And what came next was the infamous Red Terror, a brutal campaign of state violence that would end up killing hundreds of thousands of Ethiopians.
Professor Michael Waldemariam really hits the nail on the head here. He calls Alaman's assassination the revolution's first great tragedy. It was the exact moment when any idea of a moderate, peaceful revolution died and was replaced by pure, unrestrained force.
And so, the story of the 90-day leader leaves us with this huge, haunting question, doesn't it? What if? What if he had won? What if his ideas of peace, justice, and returning power to the people had actually taken root? It's a question about a completely different path for Ethiopia, a future that was lost on that dark November night in 1974.
That concludes our report for today. Stay safe and have a good night.